All right. So in a sane environment where you have a proper settings, you will have a dedicated person doing the database design, a dedicated person who maybe a DBA doing the database design. But in the kind of environment that we are, everything is on the backend developer who is going to develop the API. Will also be the one that will develop the database and all of those things like that. And even in sane environment too, the backend developer will still have inputs in the design. So how we do it normally is that you have a design day. You have dedicated design day. When you have projects like that, an enterprise project, you have a day where you do data, where you do design. When people say when database, when backend people or software engineers are saying they are doing design, it's not about graphic design or Figma and stuff like that. We are talking about database design. So this is what we are talking about, because this is the actual project. This represents the architecture of your data flow. So if you get that database design wrong, I can tell you for free that your application will be useless. So it's very important that you get the database design, how the data relate to one another, the properties to be kept, and all of those things like that, right? And how one entity relates to another entity, and all of that like that. You put that in proper perspective, and that is what we are going to be doing today. So after our today's session, you will still go back to I'm going to summarize everything for you, so you get it total. But then for literature's sake and all of those things, you still go back to that PDF, to pick one or two things. I saw that some of you have opened article, blogs and all of those things, which will be good for you. So you may need such literature to to add to your articles, to make it the contents a bit kind of rich, to help your literature basically. But I'm going to summarize everything as quickly and as clear as possible. Now I would be using one of our projects as a scenario, one of you. So I will just ask anyone to just tell me any of the projects to be used as a case. So we'll just use any of them as a case. I know everybody will be mentioning their own project. So let me look. Is a selfless person that I will pick. That I'm not even supposed to tell you my strategy. Which project should we use as a case study? Nobody's talking because I say I'm looking for selfless person. Talk. I might just pick your project. So we use it as a scenario.
Agro is. Agro is
very simple.
Wow.
Is
It's good to use the simple one. Then give us the hard one as assignment.
Let's use C-Wallet. Let's use C-Wallet.
So what was in agro is again? What's your functional requirement? Chikwebuka, what's your functional requirement?
Okay, sir. Our functional requirement, first of all, is that to buy just like an e-commerce store to handle the product.
Okay.
Buying and selling of product. That's the main functionality.
If you want to tell me about your project in one sentence, so like if you are the layman, I'm the technical person, you just want to tell me what to build. You are the owner of the business. You are not a technical person. You are telling me what to build for you.
Okay, elevator pitch, sir. Agro is an online marketplace for buying and selling of agricultural products, whereby we make products available from the local farmers
to the
buyers in other parts.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it has e-commerce components, right? It does.
Yes, sir.
So there's e-commerce components and all of that in it. Okay. So I think it should be a good one for us to use. It might be thick enough. So, but I would, right now you said C-Wallet. What was your functional requirement again? Reina.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
What did you say?
I said you what's your functional requirement again?
So I didn't hear what you asked.
What's your functional requirement? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
What's your functional requirement? What's the
Okay.
functional requirement of C wallets?
We are building a way for people to register campaigns and make donations seamlessly to them.
Okay. So I think your scope is also it's simple. So, but regardless of whichever project we are taking, I'm going to be doing something that is general to everybody, and you guys will be the one that will finish up your ERD and submit it. Today is Wednesday. At least let's have the first draft tomorrow. So at the end of today's exercise or today's session, you guys will be able to understand how to create an entity relationship or relational diagram. So an entity relational diagram is pretty much a diagram showing how one database table called entity relate to another database table, another entity. All right, and shows clearly the content of a database table. So the here will show clearly the content of each of the database table. So when we say database table, we mean each of the components that makes up your database. For instance, your applications will have something like users, your applications will have roles, your applications will have something like permissions. So depending on your business, these are basic logic that all applications usually have. Users, because users are going to be the one using the applications, right? And maybe roles, permissions, and based on your business logic, you have other stuff. So that's where I will just borrow one of the projects and just use that to explain. Now, so the before we actually do a deep dive, I will give you a pictorial view of what our outputs of today might look like. It might not be depending on which tool you use. Um, so you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, I am with you.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Oh, okay. Who is with you, Mr. Abdulkarim? You are with who?
I am following your screen, so I am understanding small.
Okay. All right. So this is a typical HRD of one of the projects that we built. Can you guys see it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
and our exercise today would be, and the book, the PDF that you see, they are trying to create an ERD using Visio. All right, so this is going to be the something like this, not exactly like this, something like this. This an example, a typical ERD showing, entities and how they are related. You can see this arrow here, connecting one entity to the other like that. So, for instance, this is a user. This is a user table, and this is everything we are keeping about the user. Please, if you're this thing, someone's stuff is echoing. So,
Mustafa, move your mic.
so this is an example of a user table and couple of things to be taken about a user. This is an example of, because this is about a freelancing website kind of application where you have users, and then you have people or other users post jobs, and people send in their proposals, and then when they send in their proposals, the proposals are being looked at by the person that posts the job, and then based on his decision, he picks one of the proposals. So several people will send in proposal. For instance, you go to freelancer.com, and you say you want to build a mobile application. You send that as a job, right? So when you send that as a job, people who have indicated that they do software development will get notification, and when they get notification, they will send in their proposals. Now when they send in their proposal, they can, the proposal, based on just properties, and then they can send in attachment to substantiate their proposal. Now when they do that, the owner of the job will look at the proposal, and then he will then award the proposal, right? So he will award one of the proposals. He will look at it. There will be some back and forth conversations. So there's chats in there. So they will talk back and forth, and then in the end, there will be an award. So the moment the project is awarded, it closes, and then it moves on to the payments, project management side, and all of that. So basically, this ERD I'm showing to you is an ERD of that project, and I'm showing you, and this is a real life scenario, and this is the kind of thing that I want to see you guys will come up with for your own project that I would review at least the first version tomorrow. But I want us to, even if you guys get it right, we can close everything tomorrow, like that. So, but today's picture is for us to understand clearly how to do this. Now, to do your ERD, the first thing is you need a tool to do it. So there are several tools to do your ERD. One of it is Microsoft Visual that was used in the book. You have MySQL Workbench. This particular one was done with MySQL Workbench. So, and even your MySQL PHP admin equally has one. That is what we are going to be using today, because on this machine Workbench is not there. I didn't get it set up before this session, but I always prefer Workbench. This same document I'm sharing with you was made with Workbench, but visual output is also very clean. You can also arrange the PHP admin outputs to look very clean. But irrespective of the tool you are using, the concept is you knowing what you are doing. And in fact, before you even get to the tool, you are going to have to have you need to have your notes. You are going to design this either on board, like I said. You are going to have this in an enterprise environment. You have a sessions where everybody sits down and you are doing the design, and you do this one after the other. You guys will sit down and you agree on, as you are doing the design, you are discussing. People will say, what about this, what about that, and then you agree that okay, this is the standard. But it's not like if you're using an agile process, you can always come back to it, and if there's a field missing, you can come back and add it. If there's a field that is no longer necessary, you can go back and remove it, and all of those things, and reiterate and all of that. But at least you have something that you start with, like that. So the first thing is...
Sorry, sir. Mr. Kenny.
Yes.
Are we recording?
Who is this thing? I'm recording locally, but I don't know if they are recording. I don't know if anybody. Who is the host? They said is Uncle Bay that is the host.
Bayo is the host. Uncle Big Bay is the host, and he's in the front end class. So do we just okay? Let me just.
Recording in progress.
I'm recording here too.
Okay, great. All right, so guys, can we move on? Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yes, sorry.
So the first thing is you have the design. Maybe if you're using it like a board that all the developers are seated, and you guys are having a virtual meeting, depending on if you're working with international company or even locally, you guys are working remotely. Let's say you guys are having a virtual session, then you have your board. Of course, you're going to have a board. And like this session, we're going to be starting with any text editor like Microsoft Word or whatever, to have our draft written. So you have your draft written before you go to your tool. And when you get to your tool, whether Visual or you're using Workbench or whichever tool, there are a variety of tools you can use to build it. We don't care. What we care so much about is the cleanliness of your diagram and the properties well captured and relationship well aligned. That's what we care about. So you choose any tool of your choice. You can choose to use the visuals that was represented in the PDF or something like that. They are always very straightforward to use. But what you should, irrespective of which tool you use, the content should be the same if it is the same project. So if the content does not drive the project cannot be done. It's going to be messed up. It's going to be messed up. You're going to have nonsense at the end of the day. Now, so let's come up with the design for the shared this thing. So let's say we are doing agro is. So first thing is that in the agro is, if it is agro is, but like I said, I'm going to be going with something that is general. So don't think if your own project is on agro is, I'm basically basing this on agro is. We'll do something that is general to all projects. So you have an understanding of what needs to be done, then you continue like that. But this is how you start. Your project is agro is. Now this project is about is this how you spell the agro is, or you use something like this? Are you guys connected? So can I write on, please?
Yes, you can go
Yes, sir,
ahead.
you can.
Yes, sir.
All right. So first, you need to identify in your agro is, just like Chikwebuka just said now, it's a platform where you have farmers and then you have buyers. So basically, farmers come to the platform to post their farm produce, the product they have with the prices and all of that, and then in turn the buyers, buy those products. So if you look at the what's it called, the system, basically you have users. Buyers are users. The what's it called, the farmers are equally users, and you equally have the administrator, because the platform owners are not the farmers, and the platform owners may not also be the buyers, but they are the people who administers and create the platform. So they have an interface where they see how things are going, what others are not seeing. Just like in Facebook, you go to Facebook to do your Facebooking. So the Facebook has their own interface that they're able to see what is going on across multiple users. But you can only see what is going on with you as a user. But Facebook are able to see what goes on with multiple users and all of that. So the Facebook administrator that also logs in, they are equally users of the applications as well. So if you look at the agro is scenario here now, what we have seen is that we have users of the application, whether they are farmers, whether they are buyers, whether they are administrators, right? So we don't really care. So we have users, and then of course what we've now seen is that we have user types. So we have users, and then you have user types. So user types are basically the maybe farmers, if you want to categorize that way, and then the buyers and the administrators, something like that. So you have something that you call a user type. Now, so you decide sometimes if you want to keep this inside this, or you want to keep. Let me keep it simple. Let me take this user type away, and then we'll handle it, as we move on. So you have users, and then another thing that's based on the scope, high level scope. We'll begin to break them down as we go on. High level scope is there is farm produce. High level scope, there's farm produce. There are users, and then now you look at the farmers are coming into the platform to post farm produce, and the users, the buyers are coming to the platform to buy farm produce. So there will be produce or products. So depending on how you call that, so they say products, right? So this is an entity, high level entity for now, and then second one, farm products, and then another thing that you would realize that we have here is that so we have the users, and then you have products. Now let's begin to, first of all, we'll come back to here. Let's begin to break down these users. So first of all, if we come here now, we have the users, right? Now, what are the things that we want to keep about the users? Or let me make this title a title case. What are the things that we're going to be keeping about the user? So when your users come to the platform, what are the things that it's important to know about them? First thing, you need to know their names, the email address, their phone numbers, the password that they are going to be logging in with, and every other thing, right? So that is what you're going to document. So depending on your application need, sometimes people keep full name, sometimes they keep separate names, like first name separate, last name separate, middle name separate. So application differ from the other, and sometimes your user, the owner of the project specifically will tell you that they want full name. And the kind of, depending on the kind of project you're building, you may not need the name separated as first name, last name, and like that. But in this scenario, we'll do what is general, and then I will just say that first, the application will have, each user will have their ID. All right. So second is we're going to have first name. Third is we're going to have something like last name. I need you guys to be making comments. Middle name, because this is common sense. Users of an application.
Phone number.
Phone number.
Email.
So email.
Address.
Phone number. Address. Physical address.
House address.
Why do you need it?
Although it depends on the application you're building, sure.
Okay.
But looking at the agro ease, you might need to have the address, probably if there's any delivery components to the application.
All right.
So I don't
you are very correct, and this is
address.
This is how a typical design session looks. When you mention something, people will ask you why we need it. So like you rightly said, depending on the kind of application you're building, some application need address, some do not. Agro is need an address, but Agro is will be needing address in multiple, not just one address, because a user might have multiple addresses, multiple delivery locations. Let's say if you want a delivery today, you want it at your office. You want it tomorrow, you want it in your house. You want it next tomorrow, you want it in a particular place, and all of that. So you will get this better if you put this address here. It means this scenario here is called one-to-one scenario. Any property you see right in the same in the user's table, in that entity like that, can only be once. Like a user can only have one single first name, a user can only have one single last name, a user can only have one single middle name, a user can only have one single phone number. This is a one-to-one scenario. So if you put the address here, it means a user can only have one single address. If you need them to have multiple addresses, then you are going to have a different entity here called address. So you'll see how our entity will be increasing. You are going to have a different entity called address, and that will be handled with associations with users. So like I said, if you need just a single address is fine. You don't need a different entity, right? So what we have here are entities. So let me make that entities, right? So if you need a single address, you can just put it here. That is fine. The same way your first name, last name, email, all those things are treated, your address will be treated that way. But if a user can have multiple of such addresses, then it's going to come as a table in itself, and then we'll deal with associations as you will see it like that. So I'm going to deal with it as a complex scenario. Let me deal with it as if it's going to be a user is allowed to have multiple addresses. I would deal with it that way. Okay, so what else? Let someone else mention something else. About a user of an application.
Recording stopped.
Hello guys, can you hear me?
Yes, business name, sir.
business name. Okay.
What of username?
Okay. Okay. Let me deal with business name first. That's Memuna, right? What?
And password filter.
Yes, sir.
So why business name here?
Because we'll be getting some information about their business. So we're dealing with business owners.
Okay. So I'm going to put asterisk on business names, and it's not going to come here. Because users of the applications are, like I said, if we are using AgroEase as an example, but take your minds off AgroEase, just look at generality, and you can also relate to your own project. Now these are users, right? The buyer who comes to buy a product on your site does not need a business name. The guy that needs a business name might be the guy who is selling the products, maybe the farmer. And so what you're going to keep inside users table is what is common to all kind of users. If they are buyers, if they are sellers, if they are administrators, all of them will have the same thing here. All right. So stuff that are specific to the kind of user, you are going to create a specific entity for them. That is how to keep a clean. You can see people who don't care about normalizations can come here and put business name. So some people will have business name, some don't have business name.
Recording in progress.
Right. So buyers do not need a business name, and maybe the administrators of the applications who are also users do not need a business name. The only guy who might need a business name will be the seller. In this case, our seller is the farmer. All right, and not all of them will equally have a business name. So to deal with that, you can just create, in this case, you can create a different entity. If you are talking about AgroEase scenario, you can create a different entity called farmer. So in this farmer table, that is where we're going to keep their business, the name of the farm that they have. So we are not going to keep it inside this users table because it's not specific to all. It's specific to kind of user, not all users. So here we are going to treat it as an entity. So if you are dealing with a scenario of e-commerce, this can also be a seller. Maybe you come here and you create an entity, you call it sellers, and then each seller can tell us their names. Just like on Jumia, you have different sellers selling different stuff like that. But in their table, users table, people who buy stuff they don't have business names, so they won't keep it that way. I hope you are getting my point. I'm trying to do something that is general, so you guys understand this thing. So the database design is basically a common sense, but before you put anything inside an entity, you have to be able to defend why it should be there. You have to ask yourself why it should be there, how that thing will be used, and why it should be where you're keeping it. Memuna, do you get that?
Yes, sir. I do.
All right.
I do, sir.
So someone said username now, which makes sense. Username. You have a username.
So how about
Password.
bank details such as
Uh,
the account number,
user
the
role
bank name?
and user status too.
Okay, so let's deal with it one after the other. Bank name. What about, someone said, what about account details, right?
Yes, account details such as the bank name
This your
and
voice. Okay. Yeah, so that's a very good one too. So that one, should we keep it here or should we keep it in another table? It's a question of how that account, what is possible with account details, right? Now, if a user is allowed to have multiple accounts, like first, if a user is allowed to have multiple account number, right? So you need to ask that question. Can someone have multiple account number? Yeah, if the answer is yes, you keep it somewhere. Is all users going to have account details? No, not all users will have account details, right? Not all users will have account details because maybe it's not required for all kind of users. But if it's needed for all users, then we keep it inside users table. But if it is not required by all users, then first it can be here. But even if it's required by all users, we then ask another question. Can a user have multiple account details? If the answer is yes, then you treat it separate. you have account details separate. Account details as a separate entity, because a user is able to have multiple accounts. If you keep it here, if you have First Bank, you can only be First Bank. But if you keep it here, as you will see later on, people are able to have multiple accounts and decide to use the one they want to use per transaction. All right. So that is a reason to keep it separate. Another reason to keep it separate is if it's not all users that will have it, we can have it like that. So there's a concept that we would talk about as we move on. There's a concept that we call one-to-one. Everything we are talking about here is one-to-one, one-to-one, one user to that particular property alone. A user can only have first name, one first name. You can't have multiple first names. All right. So if a user can only have a single account number, then we'll keep it here. We keep it here. But if account number or whatever, but if they can have multiple, then it's a case of whether it's one to many or many to many. So we'll talk about that one. I don't want to confuse us. Let's just keep it simple. This thing is very simple, and it's very, very important for any backend developer to understand how to design a database. What we are doing now is designing a database. But for you to understand, to design the database, you must understand the project that you are doing very, very well. And this is going to form the shape of your application, because this is going to shape how your applications will behave, because this is the backbone of your database. Okay, so for that reason, let's say we are keeping account details separate. You can see our entities is growing as we are moving along, just designing a user table. So something else someone mentioned is user role. Someone mentioned role. Now, if a user can only have one role, then it's good to have it here. We can just have the role here, role, and that role might be role ID. If a user can only have a single role, in some application is like that, only one role to one user. You can't have multiple role. If that's your scenario, then you can have it here, role ID. Then it would also be the reason I'm keeping role ID here is that you don't want to keep a role name. If you keep a role name, there will be problem. Even though you can keep that, there will be problem, because if someone mistype a role name, for instance, here you have let's say the role is manager. If the role name is supposed to be manager, and someone at some instance, the person that maybe at the front end, they are providing a drop down for people to fill in their role, and then what they send is manage. And then some users have actually been assigned manage before we realize that there's a typo and it was supposed to be manager, and then they now edit it to be manager. Right. So the moment they edit to be manager, some other users will now be answering manager. Their role name will be manager. So meanwhile, before we discover the typo, some users are already been assigned manage. They will keep being managed, and new users will be manager and all of that. So, but you are talking to the same user, right? So there should be a central place where roles are managed. So if there's a typo, it doesn't affect the ID. It's only the name that changes it. You understand? So people who have been assigned such roles before will keep answering the same roles and all of that. So if, for instance, this year we call them manager, these same people, the same set of people, we want to change their role name, the same role, not like a different role, the same role. We don't want to call it manager again. We want to call it supervisor. All we need to do is just edit it. The ID will remain the same, and that is why it will be ID that we are keeping. I will still explain further the moment we start having multiple tables. So here, instead of keeping, when you are keeping associations, you don't keep their literal value. You keep a key about them, what is key about them. So in this case, it will be a role ID, and this will be a case where a user is only allowed to have only one role. If a user in another application that we have built, a user may be allowed to have multiple roles. If, for instance, in Tyler, Mr. Shams is an administrator, and also a coach. You understand? So he's answering multiple roles, and maybe he's also a mentor, multiple roles. So if a user is able to have multiple roles, then you can't keep it inside this table. You cannot keep it inside this table. You are going to keep a different table for it. First, you are going to have a table called role, where all roles are managed. So if we are keeping, we have to be consistent. If we are keeping a plural for all of them, so we have to be consistent with. So we have farmers, and then here we have to be consistent as well. If we are saying account details, although we are not going to name our tables like this, but for the sake of being consistent here, we just keep this. So account details, we can have this, and then we have rows, and then if you want, this one is dedicated role management, to edit, create a new role, edit existing role, and delete roles. Then you are going to then have a table, that relates users with role. A table that even in the address we are going to do the same thing, like that, where you're going to have the relationship that exists between a user and a role. But we'll come back to that. So we can say users role. So that this is a role that doesn't have to do with any user, and this one is how a role relates to a user, like that. We'll come back to it, and I will try to break it down properly. Let's deal with one first. So let's say we call this users roles, or user roles. So if we are keeping multiple words with space, so let's just keep it like that. So this is one here is called your entity notes. You are keeping a note. That's your draft. Before you go back, before you get to your tool. When you get to your tool, no much thinking in there. You are just keying them in. You already, all the thinking, all the thought process has been done in the design session, right? So what we're having now is a design session together. Now, so what else should a user have? User style. User type.
Are we going to have like other details, like when the person gets something from that GUIs? So in case you want to track what they order, anything like that,
Yes.
like the order details, something like that.
Yes. So that, are we going to have it inside the users table? Is that your question?
Yes, sir. Like, are we going to have it inside users table,
No,
so that when they
not,
buy something and want to track what they buy?
That's a very good submission. You are not going to have it here, because a user can buy multiple times. First, because a user can buy items multiple. If you buy here, then which order are you keeping in? Which order ID are you keeping? Like I said, anything you have directly inside that table here, like here, this entity you're having here, they can only have it once. This table here, you become clearer if you do it like this. This is how database table looks. Let me come down here. Let me insert a table. This is how a database table looks. It's going to look like this. You have insert a table like this, right? So let's say we have something like this. Let me just keep like that. This is how it will look. So this thing that we put here, for let's say this is users table, eventually you will see it yourself, because we are going to create it. You will have ID. Let's say someone's ID is 1. You have first name. You have first name, or so something like this. ID. Sorry, let me undo. Better still, let me represent the real scenario. So something like this. This is how it's going to look. Like this. So let's play with this. So you're going to have this representation that we have here. You're going to have an ID, a row. This is the column, table column. All these ones are table columns. So you have something like first name. You have something like last name. You have something like middle name. You have something like email. you have something like phone number, and so on and so forth, depending on the complexity of your table. So this is just take this as an example, as a scenario. So you have someone's record like this. Let's say this person is ID 1. This person will be Musa. The last name is Ojo. The middle name is Adekunle. His email is Musa at yahoo.com. His phone number is 070, something like that. This is a user record, and you go to another row, another person with another ID. Mustafa, Abdul Karim, Olawale. Sorry, I'm giving you random names. So this one is Musti at yahoo.com, and then you have a phone number like that. Now, this is how the table would be treated. This design that you are treated. So this is a user record. This is a user record. You will see that each user have each of these entities like that. Now, if you bring other ID here, so let's say there is other ID, I will delete it because you can't make that table. Let's say you have other ID, something like that. Then here you are going to have what is it called? Column to the left, to the right rather. To the right. Now, so let's say you now imagine, I'm just explaining so that you understand. I like the fact that you brought it up. Which order are you talking about? Which order? Let's say he ordered an item today, and the order ID is something like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or something, or even let's say the order ID is 1. Okay. Now, if Musa orders tomorrow, again, what are you going to do to this order ID? Are you going to change this to the tomorrow order, or you join it and say one order, second order, like that? So this is why I kept saying that what you have in here is 1-to-1. You can see a user, Musa only has one first name, so he belongs in the first name, is treated like that. All last names will be here. Or maybe this is a structured query, an SQL kind of arrangement. If it's no SQL, even we have like JSON, just like you have your JSON properties, an object in your JavaScript. You create an object, a key with a value, a key with a value, a key with a value, something like that. So this is a key, and this is its value. But this is a database. We have multiple users bearing that names will be in that column like that. So to cut the long story short, I don't want to confuse you by even explaining too much. This guy cannot be here, but rather I like the fact that you brought it up. So this guy here, where is it? Delete cell, entire column. So rather you are going to have an order table that lists all orders. You're going to have an order table that lists all orders, and then this user order will be there, another order will be there, another person. So and you see how we will design it. Do you understand, please? So this guy can come here. What else can make it here?
The user status and the registration date.
Yes, so
date.
Yeah, so I will put the registration date, but I will put it last. I like to put it last. User status, yes, user status. So let's say you say status. So the status might be the status of the users in terms of if the user is active, if the user is verified, if the user is, depending on what you are, how you are using it. When users sign up, let's say you send them a verification email or send them an SMS, a verification SMS. So before before the verification is completed, you maybe their status will be not verified, or not inactive, depending on your verb. You use whatever verb that works for you. So you can have status, and then you have that like that. So when they are done with their verification, their status will change as well to maybe verified or active, or a user may be suspended. Let's say you want to suspend a user from an application, so you can say, okay, so you can use status like that. So status can be used to handle this depending on how you are taking it. Now, so this status like this, some people handle it as might handle it as a string or as a tiny integer. I would explain. Some people handle it as a string. When we handle it as a string, this can be something like I said, maybe someone is saying pending. You decide what you use, and that you know that has meaning to you. Let's say pending, let's say active, let's say verified, let's say disabled. So some people will use this same pending, they will call it disabled. So most of the times, so let me use disabled. So new users, they can call them disabled. So you decide what you use. Disabled, like the user hasn't been is not active yet. So you have something like this. Verified, and then let's say suspended. If a user misbehave and he is reported, instead of deleting, you don't delete users in an enterprise application. You don't delete a user. You can suspend them so that they don't have access to the application. So some people can keep it like this, like status, and then you define a key that will be used. So let's say you are keeping a static object on the server, where you are just using this from there. Another person, instead of handling it like this, they will handle it as a tiny integer. So they will call it status still, but maybe status ID or status number. So instead of calling this disabled, you decide that is 0. You can the data type, because we're going to be putting data type. Each of these things that we are putting here, we're going to have to define which data type they are when we are creating them as a table. So whether we want to use ID as integer or these things, this one here, we have to define the data type. Now, so here you may decide that the data type for your status is tiny integer, which doesn't take string like this. So you then decide in your head or in your documentation that when you see 0, it means disabled. Any user whose status, because as much as possible, you want to encapsulate your implementation or abstract your implementation such that even when people intercept your application, they still can make sense of everything they are seeing. So some people may decide to use 0 for disabled, and then verified, they can use say 1, and then suspended, maybe they use -1 or something like that. This is just a key that they keep. Or they can use 0 for suspended, let's say 0 for suspended, 1 for the user that is disabled, verified is 2. So like, I'm not saying that they are keeping the 2. Another person is using status as disabled, verified, suspended. Another person is using the status as 1, 2, 0 or 0, 1, 2, 3, like that. So but each of these key, there's a document somewhere that is saying that 0 means this, 1 means 0 means suspended, 1 means disabled. So you can put a comment in your database table like that, so that when you leave the company, or you leave the application, someone else is maintaining it, they can go ahead and be able to easily maintain without having to give you a call. Like this scenario here doesn't need a call. Everybody can make sense of it. But when you keep scenario of key like this, when you are not keeping a reference to it in another table, then you have to document properly so that people know what 0 means. Even for your own sake, if you are someone that works on multiple applications, part time, you come here and you are struggling to know what did I use as 0, or what did I use as 1, or what, you understand, like that. So I hope that is clear a bit. So it's good that we keep status, so we are going to keep it like this, status. What else
So user ID.
User ID is this ID here.
Oh, okay.
So you
So
can call
I
it
wanted to
user
know,
ID.
how do we differentiate users?
Yeah,
Like
so you
for
can have,
administrators,
thank you,
agents.
you can have user type. You can have user type as well. So you can have user type. So most of the times users can only be of one type. Most of the times users can only be of one type. So you can have not a row now. Don't confuse user type with users row. Users type with users row. Don't confuse it. No, so users types you can have um, farmers, users type as of sellers, user type as maybe buyers, user types as this thing like that, and administrator. Then as administrator, you can have multiple roles. Let's say you are the owner of the platforms, or you are the owner of the platforms, or even if you are not the owner of the platforms. When you say uh, user type is administrator, does not give everybody the same right. So you can then create roles. Even as admin, you can't do everything. Some users can manage you. Some users can manage users' accounts. Maybe some users can manage orders. Just like you go to banks. If you go to a bank, for instance, me, I'm a bank customer. The guy that is attending to me, who is a teller, who is collecting money from us, is a banker. He's a staff of the bank. But when you get there, when you get to the bank, the guy can't do everything. Certain things he would then have to ask for approval from the guy that is sitting on his back. Even that one can't do everything. He needs to get an approval, even though they are all of type banker, but they have different level of roles. By virtue of that, they have different level of permissions and their power, what they can do. So this is what separates roles from user type. You don't mix it together. So user type categorically separates the type of user, but then roles then granularly, separate users based on what the kind of functions they perform in the type they belong. So that's where this guy cannot be. So, and most of the times, like I said, user type are always, so if you're a banker, you're a banker. If you're a bank customer, you're a bank customer. You understand? If you're an administrator, you're an administrator. If it's just like that, you're like that. And that's why we're keeping this here. Otherwise, we'll have also kept it separate. If the application demands that a user can be of different types, and they can be this, they can be that, then you can handle it, centrally like that. But to keep it, things really straightforward, it's best to always keep user type like this, because we've seen that scenario. Like these applications there's an application we're building, we're rounding up. We have been on it for a while. I think I've mentioned it for also. Like you have a telemedicine applications, where a platform where people come and they get medical services online. Like doctor gets to serve them online. And then we realize that some doctors also double as the administrators. So there is administrators who are not doctors, who are just seeing everything, how appointments are being booked, how consultations are being done, like that. Then we realize that because it is triggered by some in-house doctor. So some doctors also double as administrators. So they work as their own doctor, as a doctor user type, but also work as an admin user type. They are also able to see things as they go. So how you handle such is that you still keep them as a doctor user type, but then give them a role that allows them to see what they need to see as administrator. So they are treated as a doctor, but then they have certain roles that other doctors, because not all doctors, you are then asked to ask yourself, should all doctors be able to see this? Not all doctors, certain doctors. So certain doctors who need to have that will then be given certain roles. So they are able to see what other doctors can see. I don't want to make this so that you guys won't think it's complex. Let's keep it simple as much as possible. And at every point in time when you are getting confused, you feel free to chip in. So like I said, this session might be, this thing. And if you have any confusion, this is the point to raise it. Because after now, you guys are jumping on your project and you're creating your own ELD for me to review. So you need to understand. And you can also be asking questions that relate to this thing after, when we are done with what we are doing. But I'm pretty sure that at the end of the day, the picture should be very clear. So this is a user type, right? And we just said that to just categorically separate the type of users. So people that are working on adverts, social media adverts, you have people company who are advertising. You give them whatever name you're giving them. You have the administrator who administers everything, and then maybe you see people who see the advert. So give them whatever name you want. So this is the user type. So what else makes it to this table?
Sir, please, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
For our platform, which is Say, we have like users who are anonymous. So all these details we don't collect it from them. So they just come, make their report and go.
Yeah.
And they can also go to the blog page and view the blog page.
Yes.
But for the unanonymous ones, they have to register so that
Yeah.
they can track their reports.
Yes.
So how do I manage these two set of users?
Yeah. So anonymous users are called anonymous users. They are not users per se. So what you're going to do, if you want to be, because anonymous users record, they can't see what they've posted, this thing they've made, the reports they've made in the past. They can't see it, because there's no way to easily, just like in this case now, you can get someone's order. When you log into the platform, you can get the order you have made in the past. The administrator can also get orders that a user made. Let's say you have an issue, they can ask for this thing, and they see all the order you've made in the past. Anonymous users, you can't, for yourself being anonymous, you can't track the reports you've made in the past. And there's also no way to easily track a particular report to anonymous users. So anonymous users are not logging in. So you are not taking any of these details from them. They just come in, they report, you just make their report so that that thing cannot be traced to them. That's the essence. So that it can be traced to them. So they are not going to be logging in. So there's not even no need to actually keep them. Now, the thing is how it gets complicated. How it gets complicated is that if you are working with a structured database, everything needs to be reported. When you're working with a structured database, everything needs to be reported. And let's say that let's say we are talking about the, what do you call your project again?
Say it.
If we are talking about Say It now, you see, let's say in the reports table that they have, let's say you are saying you have report ID, then you have user that report it. Let's say you have designed it like that. You say user ID, the user that report it. This is the ID of the report, the user ID, the user that reports it, and then you say the content of the reports, the date it was reported. Maybe this is pretty much a table that's that's report table. I don't know what's yours, but of course it should look something like this: the ID of the report, the user that reported it, the contents of its reports, and maybe there is attachments if there is any, and then the dates it was reported. Now this is where it gets complicated, the question that he asks, and we'll clear that as it goes on. So if some users are anonymous, some users are not, how do you keep the integrity? And if you're working with a structured query language and you are saying that this is not nullable, you have to always provide a user ID. But some users have ID, some do not. Some users who duly register will have an ID. They will have this ID which they will donate here. Some who did not register, the anonymous user, don't have anything called ID. How do you then reconcile this table with such users who do not have a ID? How to normally do that is that you are going to create them as default users. You create a user and you call that user, you can call it anonymous. This will be responsible for all users who didn't log in. So you have created them as a user. So in their head, they are not registered. Of course, they are not registered, but you have created a user who answers anonymous. So anybody who posts anonymously would be will be seen as if it's this user that is, that is posting, right? Anonymous, right? So you can just say user first name anonymous, last name anonymous, this one is anonymous. So just create a random user for them, like that, and then that will be used to reconcile any records who is being created anonymously by anonymous users, and let's say it's compulsory that they have that particular entity have that this thing we call it. If it's not nullable, then you have to provide it. Then you have to create, this is just basic logic, you create something and then you use everybody that posts anonymously, you use this user to post it. So their secret is kept, you can't trace anything to them directly, but you trace it to this guy, like that. Ojedele.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Do you get that?
I now,
A bit.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, so let's move
Yes,
on.
sir.
We are still designing one table. You can see it's just one table. We are still designing, and then as we are designing it, as you guys are mentioning, we already have 8 tables to be designed, and you will have it like that. As you can see here, you have several, and as we are designing this one, another one is coming, another one. So another thing you may want to keep is profile image, date of birth, and like that. So if we here, let's say here we want to keep profile image, that's a profile picture of the person. Most of the times user have a single profile image at a time, but if they have like in this thing in Facebook or something like that, you can have a document repository where all upload you've made in the past stays, and then when you are updating your profile, you can pick from the pool of the pictures you've uploaded in the past and use it as your profile image. But at a time you have only one single profile image. If you go to your WhatsApp, you have only one single profile image at a time, right? That's your your something like that. So then some application you can have date of birth for the user. Not all the time that you start asking for date of birth. Even all this thing is not all the time that I'm just creating something that is not all the time that you ask for all of them. If it is not needed, there's no need. In fact, if you create something that is not needed, you just want to collect as much as possible and you won't use them, you will have problem if you're building a mobile app and you need to submit to store for something like iOS. Apple will specifically ask you what you are using it for. What are you using it for? You have to be able to defend why you are getting that from the user. Apart from the fact that it's not convenient for users to be filling all these details, you're bugging them too much. You are asking for too much. Again, is why do you need it? If it is not really needed, you don't keep it. So for some application, date of birth is very compulsory. For some application, date of birth is not needed. So if it's not needed, don't collect it. If it's needed, then collect it. Some people, even you feel insecure when you are providing date of birth when you feel like this application does not need a date of birth. But some people, the application may want to use it to automatically send you happy birthday on your birthday. You send you a birthday message on your birthday, or to be able to do certain things that are specific based on your birthday and all of that. But like I said, anything that is not needed, don't take too much. And in fact, we'll talk about user experience, but that one is for user. That will be for the front-end people. Even if all is required, they don't have to take all of them at a time. They don't have to take all of them. As the user is registering, you are asking every single thing from the user. You can just take what is required. Some of them may be required, some of them may be nullable, like you don't need to provide them. So they just need to take what is really necessary for users to start going. Maybe they will first at initial they will just create email, phone number, something that is necessary to sign up. Then maybe they just say they just collect name and email, username and password to users to start with, and then like that. And please, I have seen several reviews. Don't come here and put confirm password. There's no confirm password here. Confirm password is a front end implementation, so that to ensure that the guy is entering the password so that he's not sleeping. Your database has only one password. What comes to the backend eventually is only one password. The confirm password is just the guy to type it twice to be sure he's not sleeping. So, but your table, don't come and create confirm password. It doesn't belong here. I've seen some project that we inherit that is an enterprise. Is a project that people are using, enterprise projects, and maybe the designer, they will say confirm password. This is useless. For confirm password to be used for what in the database? It's only for front end implementation, just to ensure that this password is correct before it gets there. Since the user is typing and is not seeing what he's typing, like that. So you can have date of birth. You can have something like Google ID. I will explain this because I have it here, and I will explain why I have it here. This is if you are using social authentication. If you are using social authentication. So if you are using social authentication like Facebook authentication or Google authentication, like people can just come to your application. So rather than them filling in all this information, they just log in with their Google account. So when they log in with their Google account, it's from Google that you still have to fill it this at the back end yourself. You still have to fill it in yourself. It's Google that will then provide this information. Google, because most of this information they already have it with either Google, Facebook, or Twitter. They already have them. So you then extract whatever it is you need for the sanity of your table from that Google. So you have an API integration with Google accounts or any of the social auths, so that you're within the allowable profile data, you are able to extract from that user this thing that you need. So automatically you populate it into the table from the backend. So users are not seeing it, you are not bugging them or providing it like that. But the problem is that you need to keep this ID for subsequent login. When the guy logs in now, when he logs in all the time, like that, the Google ID that he logs in with needs to be kept. Then, and why are you keeping it? It's because subsequently, the guy might have forgotten that the login that he used the first time was actually a Google, right? He might have forgotten that what he used while signing up was social authentication. He's now trying to use the login form. He's now trying to use the actual login form to log in. So he should still be able to log in with his email. The only thing is that he doesn't know his password, because you have to automatically generate a password for him, and you can't get the password that he used in his social authentication. They won't give you his password, because the moment they give you his password, then there's no security. They only give you the public profile. Then you have to automatically create a random password for all of them. Now, so if this guy is now trying to log in with the bare login form instead of using the Google email that he used the first time, you can then decide that, or that time you can create a password and call it null. So if the guy tries to log in, you can then tell him that you can remind him, depending on your backend logic, the luxury of time you have, and how thick you understand this logic, because everything here is about backend, is about logic, thinking, a lot of thinking. Now you can then, when the guy is trying to log in, you can then tell the guy that you don't have a password yet, set a password, something like that. Then you can set a password for him to log in, or he can reset the password. When he reset the password, he do a reset password, and the password is updated appropriately. So, and like that. So we can keep this. I don't want to talk too much. As we go along, you guys will see Facebook ID, because this is if it is required, or some applications don't have social authentication, so you don't need this. If you are not using social auth, you don't need all these ones I'm saying. But if you need it, if you want to support social authentication, that's when you save this thing. Now, if you support multiple social auths, you support Google, you also support Facebook, and maybe you also support Twitter, or even Apple ID or Microsoft ID, you have to save it. Because if the guy log in the first time with Google, second time is logging in with Facebook, third time is you shouldn't create multiple accounts for him. You shouldn't create multiple accounts for him. So if he's trying to log in with Facebook again, you then check if that email. Most of the times people use the same email in multiple social media accounts. So you check if that email already exists. If that email already exists, it means it's the same user. You just update his Facebook ID here. If that email doesn't exist, that's when you create a new account for him. So if the guy logs in the first time with Google, second time is logging with Facebook, third time is logging with Twitter, it will still be single account, because you are keeping a record of his ID, like that. So this thing will become clearer when we start implementation. So, but like as you are seeing, you will see that as we are discussing this database, we're already thinking through your application. That is why the developer will tell you that your hierarchy is the real application itself. You're already thinking how you will use each of these things in your logic. You're already thinking about them, how they will be used in your logic. And in a standard design session, this is how it looks. You are thinking through the application start to end. That is what your ER will give you. It summarizes your application before you even start coding at all. You already know what logic to use and all of that. I like that. So another thing that would then be common to the all tables will be date created and created by. Is going to be common to everything we do. You can see some other developers, you can see another entity, you may not see some of these things there, but I will tell you why you should have this. Date created by, last modified, the last time this was modified by. So this tracks the time anything is created, maybe the time the user registers. This is auto supply. You are not collecting it from the user, automatically populated by itself. Created by, if there are several ways people can register. Maybe administrator can also create a user, and user can also create themselves, or something like that. Or so you want to be able to track who creates this record. In this case, this record we are talking about is the user record. So it could be another kind of record. So you have date created by, last modified, the last time the record was modified. Most of the time this is going to be a timestamp automatically generated by itself and put it there. The last time the record was modified, and the person that did the modification, either is self-modified, is a set modifications, or someone else, a third party who have access to modifying the record, did the modifications. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
So
We
we
can
can
hear
hear
you.
Yes,
Yes,
sir, we
I
can.
can hear you.
Okay, so as we go along, this is a general user table, and like I said, it's not like it's compulsory that you keep all of this. You can have a user table that is not as complex as this. So you can have another person in another table. Some people will still keep, after keeping this first name, last name, middle name, they can still keep full name. But you don't really need full name, even if you need to give full name to front end people. Even if you need to give full name to front end people, you can, at the point of sending the data to them, you can just match all this name here, first name, last name, middle name, and send it to them. Instead of keeping it as a table, you already have first name and this thing, you are now keeping full name again. There's really no need for it. So you can only always transform the data before you send it to the front end for use, right? So they may not be, but in another application you may keep it for some reason, but I'm not keeping this. So let me save this.
Sorry, sir, I have a question.
Please go ahead with your question.
Yes. So, for example, on our platform, Code Ask, we keep track of the last time the user was seen. So, last seen.
Yes.
So, I'm guessing that kind of information would
should
be
on this
included
table.
on the user table as
Yes,
well.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So let me say document Tilab. I'll save this.
Document.getElement by ID.
Mr. Charles, you are here again.
I've been here. I've been learning everything that you are teaching me. If it like say backend is even sweeter than front end, as I did say, I'm like this. Backend people.
Backend is logic now. If you mean Mr. Champs, people like you will enjoy backend because you can think. People that can think is so just like Bagshim just said now, like if you want to keep the last time the person was seen, you can keep it here, last seen. People, something like that should be this material, and then let's say you want to see the last apart from the last scene, you want to see the last IP address. The last IP address. Some people can keep. If you see some users table, can be very complex. The last IP address, like if it is important to your business logical, if you are working with some sort of very secured applications, you want to know the last time the last IP address the user used, the last known location. Let's say you want to know the last GPS. If you are doing geolocation, you want to know the last place a user was seen, right? So you can say last, or you can call it lat. You can just call it lat, but you know that the lat that you have here is the last latitude. So some people you say lat. If you say lat, they mean latitude though. But if you want to keep a very expressive naming, you can keep latitude, longitude. So this is how to really, if you want to do a geolocation where you want to know where a user currently is. So you have this lat long. So the question that Bangshim asks now, you can see how we have changed this table. But you, like I said, don't keep what is not necessary. If your application is not a geolocation kind of, you don't have map in your project, you don't have, why would you keep a lat or long? But if it is so required, this is how to keep it. And you can agree with me that this should also be in user's table, because a user will be in a location at a time. It will be in a location at a time. So, and from time to time, let's say there will be a background service that will be used at the front end, because it's the front end that has if it is a mobile application, that is the one that the user is having in his pocket. If it is a web application, that's the one that the user is opening. That's the one they are interacting with. So there will be a background service that is run intermittently to supply the last, the last known location, like last GPS of the user, which is split into the latitude and longitude. IP address, you take it from the last request the person make. Maybe the last request the person make, you can write a background service that automatically populates this table from his request, from the user agent in his request header. You can get his IP address and always save his last IP address. So if you think he can run away, if you are building some sort of loan application and all of those things like that, these are the kind of things that you put into place. So people don't even know you know about them. But of course, you use it like that. Did you get it? Any other question? I want you to ask specific questions that relate to your project, because tomorrow I want to see the first draft, if not the final, of your HRD. Ask question now. So because we are moving on from users now, this is a very complex users table. yours may not be, you may not have to, because I will ask you why you are keeping it. You be ready to defend anything that you are keeping about any entity. Be ready to defend it. I will ask you why. How is it relevant in your project? If it's not relevant, don't keep it, because there will be ERD defense where we'll ask you why you are keeping that. So ask questions so we can move on to another table. Questions, please. I should move on.
Yes, sir. Please move on. If the questions comes up in between, we'll ask it.
You ask it. Okay. Now,